Welcome to the Miller Report. I think today is a very big day because it's the first debate on the mayoral candidates. And there's a lot weighing on today because some candidates are for rents in New York City and will be good for the industry, and some are completely against it. So with us today, I think I have the number one person in New York as far as quality, what she's done in the city, what she's done for the entire industry. I want to welcome Pam Liebman. How fantastic today to the Miller Report. Thank you, Pam.
Well, thank you. You're far too kind and generous, but I always love to be here and always love to spend time with you. And you're right, it's quite a day.
It's quite a day. Pam, am I right? But did you bring Corcoran's revenues up to $23 billion in the last few? Am I reading this right?
I wish it was our revenues. That's our sales volume.
I mean the sales. Okay, but am I right about that?
Yes. We've done great. I'm very proud of that. We've been the number one company 5 years running. We're not the biggest, but we have the really some of the greatest agents, I think, in the United States. So that's why I'm fortunate enough to be able to say, and you're able to say to me, we have over $22 billion in volume.
It's amazing. And you and Gary Mallon, I want to shout out to him.
Oh, Gary. We're a team.
You're a team. So what's going on? What do you see? What's going on in rental, sales, who's buying? Give us a general overview.
So, it's been an interesting market. We've had, since let's say post-election, we've been on a real run here with lots of sales happening. I'll talk about sales and then the rentals. And then, of course, all the tariff talk came around. People got nervous about the interest rates again. And we've definitely seen a fall off in sales in the month of May. Hoping that'll kick back up when the economy settles down and the uncertainty goes away. Because you and I have been doing this long enough to know the worst thing ever for markets is uncertainty. And that really speaks to the luxury segment. The average market across the country is definitely struggling because these interest rates are still really hurting people's ability to buy. And in some markets, we're very big in Florida, where I happen to live. Can I say that?
Yes, you can.
As a Florida resident, I pay a lot of attention also to what's happening there. And the taxes, the real estate taxes and the insurance in Florida have sent a little bit of a pause into parts of that market too. But like anywhere, the luxury segment is performing quite well. What we are spending a lot of our time talking about now, Suzanne, is rentals. Rentals.
We're going to talk about rentals. We're going to talk about the new law, and we're going to really get into that. But about the rentals, which neighborhoods are doing well right now?
Any neighborhood is doing well. The West Village is still the star. Tribeca, people love it. The problem with rentals is that there's just no inventory. The worst calls I get are, "Hey Pam, my daughter's looking for an apartment and she can't find a thing."
Go to Street Easy. Don't call me.
I never say that. I say go to Corcoran.com.
I say Street Easy because they're not going to pay me a fee to go find a rental, and they're going to then pick my brain and then go on Street Easy.
Well, the problem with that, though, is that they're missing a lot of listings, and that's going to get worse if this legislation that we're going to talk about passes. But a lot of rentals are just not out there, and you have to have someone that really can help you dig them out and find them. But with that said, if someone can find rentals on their own, I think that's great, and you should do it. It's just so hard to find apartments, and prices are an all-time high, and vacancies are under 2% for so many months running. So it is a struggle, and it doesn't matter if you're a young person looking for something out of college that you want to share with your roommates, or if you're a wealthier person looking for a sexy condo in a new tower. There's just not a ton out there, and part of that's because the people who aren't buying right now are renting, so they're absorbing the inventory.
And part of that is because of the new tax law, the 485X, which I want to get into. But before I want to just finish on the sales a minute.
Sure.
About the Florida situation. Do you think the Canadians getting out of the market because they're so patriotic, do you think that's affected the Florida sales market?
I think that all of that is problematic. We need people to love coming to America,
yes,
love buying in all of our states. And it is interesting how patriotic the Canadians have been. And you could even see it with the tourism. I just read the statistics about how tourism is down. They're sort of boycotting America. Hopefully this too shall pass. I have a lot of faith in the government, and I think they will figure it out. But we're definitely experiencing some pain here.
So let's go back to the rentals. I know you're familiar with 421A, which is gone. I had a developer here last week who is a Chinese developer who's trying to build and says he won't because there's no incentive, because more than 30 apartments, you have to pay these crazy numbers with construction wages, and you have to keep these apartments at fair market rents, freeze the rents forever. Is this one of the reasons that these developers are not building it? We have a housing shortage? Where are we on that?
Absolutely. It's wonderful that all the politicians can stand up and say, I'm going to make sure affordable housing gets built. I'm going to build it. I'm going to build it. Well, how are you going to go build it? It's expensive to build. Nobody is against affordable housing. I think everybody is really for it. I am certainly for it. I know you're for it, and anybody with a brain wants people to be able to afford to live in the city that they want to live in. The problem is to get developers to develop, it's really expensive, and the math has to make sense. And
Yes.
these new regulations have literally taken that off the board. And when you look at the pipeline, it doesn't exist. And you know what that means? Everything that's here already is just going to get more and more expensive. And what is being built is under 100 units because that's what's covered.
And how many apartments do you think are being warehoused right now?
Too many to even guess. I've heard so many crazy numbers, so I don't really know, but a lot.
So we have a housing shortage. We have 100,000 as I look at it. The statistics say 60,000. I think it's more like 100,000 apartments that landlords will not put on the market because their expenses cost them more money than they're going to get in rent, and they're locked in. This makes no sense. So how do we fix this, Pam?
Wait,
how?
Wait, what would you even compare that to? Here, I'm telling you that you have to put your apartment, on the market. I know this is your business. You could be a mom and pop landlord. You could be a big shot landlord, but we're forcing you to do a business where you lose money. Who else can do that? It makes no sense. How do you fix it? You have to have what we like to call compromise. And just because rents go up, it doesn't mean that people are trying to take advantage of those who cannot afford really expensive apartments. It costs money to operate an apartment. Is there anything with all this inflation we've been through that doesn't cost more money? Everything costs more money.
And what nobody's talking about is the city budget. I think 10% of the taxes of real estate taxes goes to our budget, and 25% from the commercial industry goes to our budget. So we don't want to collect the tax. What are we missing? How did we get here?
How did we get here? I think that that you have people that swing so far one way that they decide that they are going to get on this crazy bandwagon that makes no sense, but it sounds like a good soundbite, right? So these sound bites of, I'm building affordable housing, I'm freezing rents. It doesn't work. It's crazy. It makes no sense, but it's a great headline. And who wouldn't want to have lower rents? I would like my rent to be lower, wouldn't you?
Well, if somebody told me vote here, and by the way, if you vote on for this candidate, you'll never get a rent increase, and you'll have free rent or no increase forever, who's going to say no? This is the issue. But this is what they don't realize is that the services will go down. Who's going to pay for our wonderful city to keep running? And we're going to get into that in a minute, but I just want to finish on just statistics about real estate. Let's talk about the conversions from commercial to residential. Will that add a lot of housing? How many do you see going on there?
I haven't looked at the pipeline recently, but we've been meeting with a lot of developers looking to convert these apartments. So I'm excited about that, but they're not necessarily going to be inexpensive. These are expensive to renovate and rehab a commercial building into a residential building. But hopefully that'll give some more inventory, put some more inventory on the street for people who desperately need it. I was kidding before that my friends call and say, hey, I need an apartment for my daughter, my son. Just this past week, I had a friend of mine say, hey, I need something for my son. He just graduated college. Their budget is $7,500. They'd like a 3-bedroom downtown. And, I didn't want to laugh, but
it sounds like it's so much anywhere else in the world. That gives you maybe a 2-bedroom.
That's why it's sad. It's almost funny, but it's really sad because that's crazy, $7,500, and you can't find what you're looking for. That's a lot of money. When I came out of college, I was spending $800 a month for a 2-bedroom rent stabilized apartment, which I did give up, by the way. Probably should have kept it.
Let's talk about the brokerage law, which is a really big thing. Could you take us through it? Take us what's at stake. Where are we? It's going to be a shakedown in the industry, everybody. It's not good for the people that are looking for apartments, and it's not good for the real estate industry, and it's not good for landlords. It's just not good. Tell us.
And I'm so glad that you asked me about this because, again, it's being misconstrued because of the sound bites. The sound bites are, you'll never have to pay a broker again. You know, brokers are made to be these greedy people that all they want to do is take these tenants' money and not treat them well and put them in bad apartments. That's absolutely not the case. This will not make tenants never pay a fee again. In actuality, and I'll explain why, the tenants are going to pay more fees than ever. Because the way the law is currently written, and we'll see if this is the way it gets passed, we're all very eager to see what happens today or tomorrow, it says that if a brokerage firm advertises an apartment, then they can no longer collect a fee from a tenant. Well, that sounds good, right? But if the landlord has not agreed to pay the broker to advertise the apartment and bring them a tenant, then guess what? The broker's just not going to advertise the apartment because we're not in this business to not make money. We're in a service business and we would like to get paid for our service, just like everybody else would. So if you think about that, if we're no longer allowed to advertise apartments,
unless you have a signed agreement,
unless we have a signed exclusive, and when we have a signed exclusive, it means that the landlord is paying us, but the far majority of rentals are open listings.
what happens to another company that wants to bring a client to you and you have the exclusive? What happens to that other broker? They can't bring a client because they're not going to get paid, or the tenant, how does that tell?
The tenant is going to have to pay them. So tenants, when they want to be represented, are going to have to pay somebody for that representation, or the tenants can try and find the brokers that represent those exclusive properties, and then they don't have to pay anything because the broker will be paid by the landlord.
That's how it is now. That doesn't really change on the tenant side. If you want to hire a broker, you don't want to go on Street Easy, you're going to pay them. But what you're really saying is that all those open listings are not going to be represented because I want to go to a Corcoran listing. You're the biggest and the best. Now, if I don't get an exclusive, I'm not going to be represented. That's a lot of paperwork for nothing.
Right. So think about this, Suzanne. Today, you might be able to go on Street Easy or on our website and see thousands of listings.
Right.
Okay. Many of them are open listings. We have nothing signed by the landlord saying he will pay us a fee. When this law passes, all of those listings will disappear.
Wow.
So now you have nothing to look at. So now what do you have to do to find an apartment? You have to hire a broker for you to go out and find you an apartment.
It's going to cost more money.
It's going to cost more money. And if the landlords are going to have to pay on these other listings, they are going to, factor it into the rent. It's unfortunate, and I feel badly. It's hard for tenants, the first month's rent, the last month's rent, the fee. But it is what it is, and we've all been subjected to it. So we do tons of voucher business. We love the voucher business. We are happy to help anybody find an apartment, but we have to play in the system, and they have to understand the system. And I'm telling you for a fact, I know this, going forward, if that passes and we can no longer advertise open listings, these poor tenants are going to now have to hire a broker and pay them to find an apartment.
Or go on their own, and they'll be misled.
But they're not going to see
completely misled.
They're not going to see as much as they can see to go on their own, right? And it's just going to be a difficult situation. And I hate to say it because it's my industry, but there's a lot of players in the industry who maybe are not so on the up and up, and it's going to be ripe for some interesting situations where nobody knows who's paying what, who's getting paid, and I just don't want it to be any harder on the tenants than it already is.
Or the brokers that work really hard. So
Yes.
you're going to lose. You think we're going to lose a lot of the people that are the agents?
I don't know that that's going to be the case because it's a free market and it'll work itself out. The agents will get paid. It's just a question of who's going to pay them. I love OPs, right, where the owner pays and the tenant gets to walk in there and not have to pay a fee. and the broker gets paid by the owner, that's a great situation, and it happens a lot. But when the rental market's already tight, there's less than 2% vacancy. And many of these apartments that are on the market are by single owners who happen to own a condo and they just want it rented out. They don't pay. They are not willing to pay. So the tenants do have to pay. My advice to the tenants is try and find something where you don't have to pay a fee. If you can't, hire a reputable broker and ask them what the fee is, and you could try and negotiate. There's nothing that says you have to pay X. You have the flexibility. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I want them to know the truth. You have the flexibility to ask what their fee is, and you can always try and negotiate it.
Do you think there's any market for a flat fee brokerage with all this coming down? Because some companies are trying to open now and say they're going to have a new model. We're just going to pay a flat fee. Are you seeing any of that noise?
The problem with that is it's never worked in the past, and I don't think it works in New York City because it's too complicated. The board packages, the quality of the agents that will work for a flat fee are not very high, and that's where tenants find themselves getting into, some crazy situations. Also, there's fraud out there where people will put apartments out there and say there's no fee, and they're fake apartments. So you have to be really, really careful. Never give anybody money without making sure they have the right to lease you that apartment. Like, that breaks my heart when I hear these stories of people who have gotten ripped off. If it's too good to be true in the rental market, trust me, it is too good to be true.
That's life. I'm really glad you brought this up. In some of our buildings, I'm finding so much fraud right now that one of the advantages of using a real estate broker is that they're going to comb through some of the fraud. I mean, identity theft. We had a sting operation in one of our apartments where the person stole somebody's identity and the FBI got involved, and they literally showed up and put the guy in jail. But the broker is the one who brought it to our attention. So this is another advantage of using a broker, is particularly when there's so much theft going on. Someone's going to qualify them. They're going to check it for you. They're going to protect you. It is more important than ever that you just don't go on your own with what's going on in today's world. I believe that.
Yeah. We won the deal of the year, Jessica Clunan from Corcoran, for the top rental deal of the year this year for exposing a fraud just like that. So I was very proud of her for doing it because, she could have just walked away from it, but she didn't want anyone to get hurt by this guy, and she did what she needed to do. But I'm really worried. A lower than 2% vacancy rate. We cannot operate as a city where we're going to have even more apartments taken off the market. And when people talk about real estate and rentals, they always think of these big, rich, fancy landlords. That is not the case.
No.
Think of all these apartments in Manhattan, Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, Staten Island that are mom and pop landlords. How are they going to put someone in their unit and never be able to raise the price on them
or
again?
Evict them? I have somebody coming on next week who's representing. Actually, he represents Richard Lefrak in the last case. He's taking him to court on housing because it's 3 years to evict somebody. So you have a small landlord that's going to be stuck with the tenant. They're capped on their rents. They can't evict them. This is a takedown on our industry and on landlords. I'm feeling harassed that this is an attack on landlords.
Yeah, I don't know why everybody hates landlords, but again, I go back to what you said before. It sounds great. 2 million people in rent-stabilized apartments. You're going to tell them, hey, we're never going to raise your rent again. So they're going to go out and vote for that candidate without looking at the consequences. Every action will have a reaction. And maybe they'll be happy in their apartments for a while till they literally fall apart and nobody does anything to fix them. But think about all the people that will never, ever be able to live in the city because they won't find an apartment. If I was the mayor of Hoboken or Jersey City, I'd be jumping for joy if this law passes because that'll be a great place. That'll be a great place to go. And you see rents rising there already.
Yeah, New Jersey seems to be doing better than New York right now regarding quality, and I'm very concerned about that, which is why it's very important that we vote and get the right elected official. And let's just go back to the sales again regarding foreign buyers. What are you seeing that? I see tourism down. I see the street. I don't know if it's because there's congestion pricing or just that there's less people, but I'm finding it just a little more empty. What are you seeing?
I agree with you, and we track the foreign buyers, and they were down by about 13% this month. So good instincts that you have there. So a little bit about what we chatted about before. People are annoyed at us with the tariffs, rightfully so. Whether it's the Canadians, whether it's people coming over from China, the Far East, it's not great. Even when you see even super luxury brands like Hermes and LVMH saying that their business is down too in some of these stores, that's meaningful. It's really, really meaningful. So I feel like we were on this great roll, and then all of a sudden we're getting hit with these things from the federal government and now from the city and the state. And I just hope somebody steps up with a sense of realism. I went to this amazing event last night that honored the Rudin family, 100 years of the Rudin family. Wow. And you think about what that family has meant to New York. And back in the dark days of the 70s, how Lou Rudin stepped up and helped this city. I mean, people forget about that. And guess what he was? He was a real estate developer. But the real estate developers are the people who brought the city out of crisis by prepaying all those real estate taxes back then. And we shouldn't forget about that. And we should not vilify the people that have built this skyline and are changing this. And affordable housing, they are ready, willing, and able to build the affordable housing. We need politicians. We need politicians that will get on the bandwagon and understand this is not about getting elected. This is about getting a city that can be very, very welcoming to all people, from the smallest rentals to the biggest condominiums.
Isn't she wonderful, everybody? I mean, this is, I want to clap. I want to talk about 485X, which is probably one of the issues. So the politicians have nixed 421A. 421A at least helped give these developers that you're talking about some latitude in getting a tax incentive. They've completely gotten rid of it. So there is no tax advantage for sales development right now, only rentals. Am I wrong about that? So why would anybody want to build a condo, which people really invest in and they care, if they're not going to get any tax incentives?
Well, they're not. So I'm just looking at my statistics here now. So 485 versus 421A, right. The developer response has been most new permits are for 99-unit buildings to avoid tougher mandates, leading to fragmented site planning and a mismatch in the housing needs. While offering 40 years of tax relief, you have steep wage requirements, permanent affordability rules, and it's straining the construction budgets, and we have complicated financing. Everything is expensive. It doesn't make sense to build it. So where are we all going to be when this pipeline, 3 years, we have not a lot new coming to market? And this city is vibrant, right? This city excels at bringing new people in. And it's sad because over the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of people leave. And
high taxpayers leave.
Yes. Hello. No. Cut that out.
We'll cut that out. Are you watching the proposed guidelines for the New York stabilization? Are you familiar with what's happening there? So I'm going to I'll read it. I have my statistics now. You. So it's 1 year's 1.75% increase that could be on a rent stabilized apartment up to 3.75. 2 years 3.75 up to 7.75. But I'm told that is a 6.5% percent increase in operating costs. So I could only raise your rent by max 3.75 on a 1 year lease, but my expenses went up to 6%. And my real estate taxes went up to 3.9%. What am I missing? And how would a small landlord ever make a living? This is preposterous.
It's ridiculous. You're wearing this gorgeous pink suit today, right? So let's say I was selling that and it cost me $500 to make that suit. And you told me, I can only pay you $300 for it, and you have to sell it to me. So what? I'm
going to close my store.
I'm going to close my store. I'm going to lose $200 on every sale. It doesn't make sense, and I don't understand why some of these politicians who are pushing this agenda so strongly don't get it. Like, how do they not get it?
I think it's about winning. It's not what's best for the city, unfortunately. And I think this is just a takedown on capitalism. I'm very sorry to say that on the air, but I cannot think of, other than maybe our federal government Medicare, what socialism government has ever done well. This is capitalism. This is the United States. We should love it and embrace it and be thrilled. It doesn't make sense to me.
Now I'm going to clap for you.
Thank you.
It's really true, but I don't know. I'm very excited to see this debate tonight. And I wonder how much depth we get out of it. I mean, what do you think? Is it just going to be about, hey, freeze the rents and, other crazy things, or is it going to be explain how you're going to do that? Explain how you're going to build 10,000 affordable units.
Or how you're going to freeze 1 million units and their rent. And the expenses keep going up. And what's going to happen to these landlords? I will tell you right now what's going to happen to these landlords. They're going to walk away from their buildings. They're going to not improve it. They're going to leave New York. They're going to give it back to the banks. And good luck getting any services, your apartment fixed, your streets cleaned, and it's going to be worse than the 70s. And that is my message to voters today. You got to get out. They've got to vote. Pam, I know that you're not really allowed to talk politics and you're a Florida resident, but I do have to ask you on behalf of all of our million New Yorkers that care about real estate, that care about the city, you being the face of real estate, which candidate do you think will be best for real estate and running our city in that area?
So you're right. I can't vote here, but I do care so much about the city and what happens here. Mayor Adams has been great for real estate. I'm a big fan. And I think Andrew Cuomo will be a very pro-real estate mayor. So I like those two candidates. I never tell anyone who to vote for. That's not my business. But I know that what you're asking me is on the real estate front of things. I think those are the clear front runners because they actually get it. They understand the reality of what has to happen.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Pam. And we're going to go viral with this, and everybody's got to get out and vote.
Uh-oh.
It starts on June 14th. Early voting. Get out and vote.
And read more than the headlines, please. Read what everything really, really means.
This is the most important election. As great as New York is, it could fall really fast. So thank you for coming on the Miller Report. Thanks for sharing, and love this woman.
Thanks,
you.
Suzanne. Pleasure.
Okay.